UFC 300 is set to be one of the biggest cards of all time. But should Conor McGregor main event, or should we see a title fight? Before we get into that, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, as we have brand new videos every single week. So, Mark, with UFC 300, this has to be a big spectacle, right? Are you interested in seeing Conor McGregor return?
I've said before, I think the UFC's moved on from Conor. He's not been consistent enough. And, you know, like there's other champions where you're like, oh, actually, no, I do quite like this over here. And there's other stars have been building. It's not like the UFC was on hold whilst Conor was on hold or on a yacht, putting certain substances in his body, you know. But
proper 12, Mark, proper 12. That's all he's been having.
Yeah, and creatine, lots of it. Yeah, I'm with you though with that. With Michael Chandler, he gets a lot of hate, but every single one of his fights have been amazing. Yeah, win or lose, you know, it's been fantastic, and it is a shame because he even said on his debut he's no spring chicken. And the amount of fights that we could have got. We've already had fantastic fights with Michael Chandler. He's fought the top of that division, win or lose. But it just seems like this is such a shame. And it does annoy me that it seems like one person can really pull the brakes and call the shots. Because that's the way it seems.
And it is the way it seems because that's the way it is, unfortunately. Conor is just that big star, whether we like it or not. You know, yeah, fine, the UFC is not being on hold, but they'll put it on hold for him. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And it is a shame. And I just hope to God we see him return, because otherwise we're just going to be waiting around even longer. And Chandler's not got long left. He's got maybe 1-2 fights left in him before he retires. So I want to see him fight. So hopefully we get to see that fight soon and then see Chandler go off onto something different. So, Mark, obviously, you know, my fantasy is to see Conor versus Chandler main event, UFC 300, or I'd gladly have Islam versus Oliveira, but it seems like neither of those fights are going to happen. So for you, Mark, who would your sort of fantasy fight be at UFC 300?
It's funny you said spectacle earlier because I have one that I thought might be quite fun. Now, let me explain. Let's hear me out here. Brock Lesnar versus Fedor, right? Or Brock Lesnar versus someone that's coming back, you know, like Fabricio Verdum, someone like that, like a big heavyweight name. Brock Lesnar fought at UFC 100, 200, and there's a chance of 300. He's 46, 47, something like that, but it's Brock Lesnar. He ain't going to get a title shot. It's a one-off, like he did with Mark Hunt. I mean, the cup that he will, you know, piss into will burn, but, you know, at the same time, it's a spectacle fight. Just let me live this fantasy in my head. Maybe not Fedor, that was a bit too far, but someone like Fabricio Verdum or something, you know, just a one-off appearance. I think that'd be quite cool. Not the main event, but somewhere on the main card.
Yeah. Opening up the prelims, I reckon, yeah. But that's what Brock likes to do now. You know, we don't want to make it about wrestling, but mainly he comes in, does the first fight, and then pisses off home. He's not bothered. I'm gone. I'm done. I'll see you all later. It sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous, but I love it. I'd actually love to see Brock come back, especially now they've done the big TKO merger. And now that CM Punk returned to WWE, do CM Punk versus Brock in the UFC. CM Punk would get mauled.
Let's throw the weight classes out of the window just to see this. I'm pretty sure every fan will tune in for that though as well.
100%. Oh god, I don't think anyone would let it happen. I cannot see a commission allowing a live murder to happen on TV. I
don't know. We had Petr Yan versus Jose Aldo. The referee wanted to see a murder in that fight, didn't he?
Oh my god.
So terrible. We've had your main event, then Dwayne, your fantasy main event. What is your co-main event for UFC 300?
So, yes, Dustin Poirier seems very, very keen at returning to UFC 300. And it seems there's a lot of people knocking around for Dustin. But I feel like he needs to fight legends of the sport now and sort of do entertaining fights, because I don't think we're going to see him go for a title shot anytime soon now, you know. I mean, if there's an interim title going, yeah, sure, put him in for it, he'll win it. But, you know, for the main gold, he can't. So, for me, I want Dustin Poirier versus Rafael dos Anjos. Dos Anjos is a big name in the sport. He's a former champion. He's kind of near the end of his career. and a big name like Dustin, it could just be a big fun fight. When I was sort of doing a bit of research for this video, and I thought, right, let's have a look. I'll do Dustin versus Rafael dos Anjos. And I thought, have they fought before? I thought, surely they must have. And I had to double check, triple check, and they've never fought. And I find that so strange. Two big names of the 155 division have never met. And you think, wow, that's insane. So I'd love to see those two fight.
I think it could be a good one. But I think with the way that they've never met, I forget Dustin was a featherweight for a while. Then, RDA was champion. And I think as he lost his belt or whatever had happened there, he kind of became a little bit inconsistent. And then Dustin just seemed to rise. And it would make less and less sense for them to fight as they were like this. So I think it'd just be name value alone. Don't get me wrong, I'd like to tune in for it, but RDA is quite seasoned now. And I don't even know if that'd interest Dustin to fight, but I'd still tune in for it. Always tune in for a Dustin Poirier fight. He's got one of the most impressive resumes in UFC.
It's
at
insane.
all, completely. But it's funny you say Dustin Poirier because I've gone for something a little bit outside the box. I've gone Dustin Poirier versus Kamaru Usman. Now,
okay.
Because do you remember the rumors? I think it was after the Michael Chandler fight with Dustin where he was talking about moving up to welterweight. And I thought, well, you've got to be realistic about this, like he ain't going to get a title shot, all that because of the times. But I thought the times would make up for it with Kamaru. He'd be ready to face Dustin, to welcome him to the welterweight division. And you need a big name like Kamaru. Imagine how that'd go down. No predictions or anything like that, Dwayne, but a nice little 3-rounder of Dustin Poirier versus Kamaru Usman.
It'd be a lot of fun, actually, thinking about it. And we've kind of gone down similar pathways, former champions, legends of the sports, very similar sort of fights. But I think Usman versus Dustin's a lot more interesting than mine. But I saw Dustin talk about it on Ariel the other day, and he was saying, oh, I'm not going to move up to 170. So he bagged on about it for ages. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. Because he was saying, look
at me. Hook, line, and sinker.
Dustin's
fell for it.
What a loser. So Dustin was saying, he said, look, he said, I walk around 180. I cut that 155. These guys, they're weighing way more than that. But I think Usman versus Dustin would be a really, really fun fight. I'd love to see it happen. And maybe it could. With UFC 300, I feel it's one of those cards where almost anything can happen. We can get some fun, big spectacle fights, right? That's the whole point of this card, isn't it? And sort of talking about sort of Usman, he just came up against Khamzat Chimaev, and that was a really, really fun fight. But another fight I'd like to see in that division, and I want to see him fight a real middleweight. I want to see Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whitaker. And I think 300's a perfect card for that. I think it'd be really, really good.
I'm terrified for Robert Whitaker in that fight. I've already had my heart broken by watching him versus DDP. I don't think my heart could take Whitaker being finished again. I cried live when Izzy finished him. I nearly cried when DDP did it, and I think this would just break my heart in two.
Yeah.
It's an interesting fight as well because Rob's style, if Khamzat wanted to keep it standing, Rob's style could really, cause him some problems because he loves the oblique kicks, doesn't he? And stomps, that kind of thing. It could really cause Khamzat some problems. But on the other hand, if Khamzat wanted that to go to the floor, Rob's no joke as a wrestler, but it just seems to be that Khamzat can throw anyone around.
Yeah, he does. But I don't know. I don't want to sort of like discredit Khamzat because he is fantastic and we saw what he did to Usman. But, I don't think Whitaker's, a wrestler that you should underestimate. I think he was like on the national team for Australia. He's a big guy, physically strong, very, very experienced. And I think that's where Khamzat might falter. He's fighting a really highly experienced guy who paces himself well, because we've seen how quickly Khamzat tires himself out. He injures himself. He throws himself around and he gets a lot of success doing that. But I'm not sure if he can get Whitaker out of there. I think Whitaker might do him in. But, this is all sort of fantasy booking. It's hard to really know what happens. These aren't real predictions. They're just sort of daft picks out there. So, Mark, who else would you have on this card then?
Right, third, I think you'll like this one, Dwayne. I went for this. I've heard a few rumors, seen a few rumors online, and it really did make a hell of a lot of sense. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt. How good does that sound, right?
Yeah,
Seen that
I'd love
online
it.
quite a bit. And Max, to move up to lightweight, it's a fight that he hasn't had before. It's violence ensured, to be quite honest with you. And it gives Max that credit back. I mean, I know that we've said that he's been doing side quests since he lost to Volk 3 times in the featherweight division. But this gives him, it gives it a bit more prestige to go for the BMF belt, because Max Holloway and the BMF belt, they kind of go together, don't they? So does Justin Gaethje, which is why I think this fantasy booking would be insane.
It would be insane. It'd be wild, and I'd love to see it happen, because I think Max is in a very similar position to where Dustin is, in the sense of, yeah, you're not getting a title shot, unfortunately. It's just not going to happen. So what else are you going to do? Because you can't keep fighting these lower ranked guys and just blasting them all out of there, because it ruins the division, doesn't it? So a fight like this seems perfect. But the only caveat I see with it is just Justin seems to think the BMF belt is an interim title. He's like, yeah, I'm moving up. I'm going to fight Islam next. It's like, mate, you've got the silver belt yet. It's not the interim gold. It's not it's not a number one contender spot. So, like, he seemed going, I'm going to wait out. I'm going to wait for Islam. And it's such a shame. You think, no, get back in there. Defend the BMF belt. That's what I want to see with this belt. If we want to make it seem legitimate, we have to defend it. We have to see fights. We've got to see something being done with it, right?
To actually legitimize this belt, that's for worse word. I think it does need to be defended. But I think Gaethje's in a fortunate position for himself, where he could just sit out and do nothing for 18 months and he's still get given a title shot, because of the names that he's fought, and going up against Islam, they've never fought before. That would sell like hotcakes.
Oh yeah.
So he's in a very fortunate position. So he doesn't need to fight anyone else. It depends if he wants it. Again, it's one of those, like, I'm sure they've got plenty of money, but it depends. Do you want the legacy fights now, or are you just waiting for that bag? It depends. You can get both, but it's tricky. Here's me speaking like I've never fought before. Like I've never fought ever.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Really, really difficult, because I get both points, isn't it? With Justin, he could go out, have these big fights, but you get why. You think, nah, if I just wait around, I'll get a shot at the golds. You can't blame him, can you? Because he's got money, he's got name. The only thing he hasn't got is the gold. So, yeah, I understand why he wants to do it. But sort of my next fight, I've been thinking about this for a while, is Henry Cejudo versus Petr Yan. I think that'd be a really, really fun fight. It'd be like two Oompa Loompas going at it, really just swinging at each other. I think it could be really, really fun, because, Yan's a really good striker, got some decent wrestling, whereas Cejudo's a really, really strong wrestler and got some okay striking. So they almost sort of contradict each other in styles, but I think they're both good enough at their polarizing style that it'd make it a really fun fight.
I love that, and Henry Cejudo, he's got some okay striking.
Well, he's got great striking, but I mean in comparison to Yan.
I know what you mean, yeah. And to be honest, I'm always tuning in for a Henry Cejudo fight. I'm always tuning into a Petr Yan fight as well. Petr's in an unfortunate position where he could really do with the win. So that, I think if that fight was made, Petr Yan versus Cejudo, it'd be a kind of lose-lose, no matter who wins, for the UFC, because one star is going to get thrown out.
That's the problem, isn't it?
To make sense of it, I suppose if you were gonna throw anyone out, it'd be Cejudo, because he's already been a double champ. He's already had his day. And Petr Yan, he wants to get back on the rise, doesn't he? Because he had an unfortunate last few fights. But it would be entertaining as hell to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing Cejudo back in there. I'm glad he didn't just one and done the division after coming back.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's actually making a go of it. I think that's the right thing to do. And Petr Yan, like I've said, he could do with getting back in the win column. And a name like Henry Cejudo would do him the world of good.
Yeah, it really, really would. And it could... But the issue is... If Petr Yan does beat Cejudo, I don't think that gets him back into the title picture just yet. And he seems keen on that, doesn't he? So he'd have to fight like a big contender or something, right?
I do believe so. It's just with the UFC, because it changes that quickly. We kind of can't go past whatever fights in front of us. It just seems to be get that out of the way, and things might have changed altogether by then. So once this is done, perhaps then things will be more clearly, or there'll be a clearer path to the title or something like that. Someone might get injured. It just changes that quick that you've kind of just got to be, onto it and just take it by fight. But we were speaking earlier about the featherweight division, and that brings me to my next fight on my fantasy UFC 300 fight card is Arnold Allen versus Brian Ortega. I think that they're both big enough names. I think this is one of those like, oh, actually, this could really do well. Obviously, we're behind our boy Arnold Allen, and I want him to batter Brian Ortega. I don't know why he's still on the UFC roster. Never fights.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
Get him out of there. I don't see what it is. I'd hope that Arnold Allen would batter him more than Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski did. But I think it could be a fun fight anyway. And it's another great name for Arnold Allen. Obviously, he stepped up against Max Holloway. It didn't go his way, but a very close competitive fight. Brian Ortega is another name to solidify. Yep, I am here at the top of this division, not just a contender. I am one of the very, very top, and I'm almost there for a title shot.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I think Arnold Allen needs to be fighting these big names, these high-level fighters, and get himself back towards that title shot. Because if you beat someone like Ortega, that's it. He's fighting the winner of Volk versus Topuria. But the only problem is, I think Arnold Allen's fighting at UFC 297, and he's again that is it against Esolov or whatever his name is, which is a silly fight for him to take. I think this guy's like ranked 10th or something. It's like, why are you fighting so low down, Arnold? You're a big name yourself now. You're a high contender. Get yourself in there. But it's weird, isn't it? I'm such a, I'm so picky. I'm like, oh, these guys should be fighting all the time, blah, 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 blah. Oh, why is he fighting this? That's stupid, go wait around. Like, you just can't win, can you? It's just silly. But yeah, it's a fight I'd love to see. I always want to see Arnold Allen fight. I think it'd be great. So then for me, Mark, a fight I really, really want to see at UFC 300. And it's a fight I've been wanting to see for a long time, especially with sort of the light heavyweight division and how interesting that is. And it felt like we were close to getting it, is Jiří Procházka versus Jan Blachowicz. I think these two are two top contenders. We need to see these two fight, and then they can have a rematch with Alex Pereira. I think it'll be great. Two European fighters going at it on a massive card.
Yeah, Polish power versus the terrifying samurai. I think that could be absolute explosions everywhere. And that fight makes sense as well. You've always said, so going off your logic, is that losers fight losers, winners fight winners. Jan's coming back after a loss. So is Jiří. Get them two in there together, fighting there. And a number one contender spot there, no one would have a problem with that. Because I think Jamal's going to be out for a good while yet, isn't he? And I think they've done enough to solidify themselves as top contenders, 100%. I mean, I can't deny that Jiří still terrifies the life out of me. And I think he'd beat Jan, but we're not really into predictions yet. I just like the idea of that. I like the idea of getting some more momentum behind this light heavyweight division and shove it out there. Let's get it lively again.
100%. It's one of these divisions that's got some fantastic talent on it, but it's a cursed division, isn't it? We're always waiting, right? Okay, who's getting a crack at the title now, right? Who's fighting for the vacant belt now? It's getting a joke. So I want to see a really, really big contenders fight, and Jiří versus Jan would be incredibly exciting. But if not, hopefully we'll get to see that on like a European card next year. That'd be really good. Maybe in Czech or Poland. You've got some big stars from over there, and you've got all these English and French fighters who can go over as well. Make this big European card. I'd love to see that happen.
I think how closely those two are ranked, I doubt that we will never, ever see that fight. One day we will see Jiří Procházka versus Jan Blachowicz. But my last fantasy pick for UFC 300, Dwayne, I would love to see Jim Miller go out on a win at UFC 300 against anyone. I don't care who it is. He fought at UFC 100, 200, and potentially going to fight at 300. Get that Robbie Lawler spectacular under a minute finish and ride off into the sunset. I would love to see that happen. I think it just makes sense. It's the fairy tale ending, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be perfect. You know, especially as you were saying, Jim Miller's been at UFC 100, 200, and don't forget, Mark, so's Brock. He was at 100, 200. Let's put Jim Miller versus Brock at UFC 300, and then they've both done it.
F5 through the cage.
But yeah, you're right. Seeing Jim Miller fight there, I think it would just be a lovely moment, wouldn't it? You know, that's a great final fight. He's been on all these big cards. It's the perfect way to go out, isn't it?
It's perfect. And let's not forget that Jim Miller hasn't exactly flustered. Yeah, he's got wins and losses, but who hasn't? But, you know, like the last few years of his career, wasn't it only a few months ago he got like a 33-second knockout against a young up-and-comer? Jim Miller's late 30s, like, come on, like, if he can still crack, he can still crack. Exactly like we were speaking about Robbie Lawler earlier. But as soon as he beat Nico Price in about, 30 seconds, you think, oh, maybe he shouldn't retire. But that's just us as greedy fans, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the big problem, isn't it? But either way, UFC 300 is going to be an incredibly exciting card, or at least it bloody better be. Otherwise, I'm coming for you, Dana. Brother, like I'm Hulk Hogan.
I'm sure he's terrified. I'm sure Dana White is absolutely terrified there.
Should be. He should be. UFC 300 has to deliver, and I cannot wait. But thank you for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out.